founder of researchshiksha.com. He is a consultant of data science and analysis for research projects in industry and academics. He is well-known trainer of big data analytics, machine learning using R, Orange Python, Stata, SPSS, MOS, and eViews for data science and data analytics. Sir has an experience of more than 20 years in academics and industry. He has conducted more than 500 workshop training programs all over India in last 18 years on data science using softwares like R, SPSS, Python, eViews, Stata, MOS, etc. He is the author of 3 books: Financial Analysis, Business Research Analytics, and Financial Research Management. Sir has worked with the Institute of Management Technology, IMT Ghaziabad, as an assistant professor in the area of finance and analysis. Sir, we are privileged to have you among us. I can personally add here that Sir is a very popular teacher whose knowledge has benefited us as researchers, whether through his hands-on training or videos on virtual platform. We always get compliments for you, sir, as a resource person during the faculty development program that we have been conducting in the past. We welcome you, sir, and just over to you now, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everybody. So now the 2 topics I will cover today. One is the sampling design and the second is hypothesis testing. So now I start the session and okay. So let me start. The topic which is given to me for this session
Sir,
is...
just a minute, sir. Shall we keep the chat on? You'll take up
yes, ma'am. Please keep the chat on.
Thank you, sir.
So am I audible and can you listen me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so these are some of the formalities which we have to ask every time. If I'm audible and if you can see the slide, so let's start. Thank you very much. The topic which is given to me is sampling and sampling design, and I will discuss the key words, key concepts, and the problematic issues in sampling. And I know that wherever a scholar gives presentation of the PhD thesis, there is a 99% probability that he will face the questions about the sampling design. So I know that this topic is very, very important topic, and I remember many cases when the thesis is rejected by the reviewer only on the basis of sampling design. So I know I faced many scenarios when because of the improper sampling design, the thesis was delayed by 6 months, 1 year. So I had a very bad experience about this topic. It is a most complicated topic, it is not a difficult topic. It is actually complicated topic. So with a few these comments, let's me start the issues. And according to my experience, I know that if you want to demotivate anybody, any researcher, so try to ask some questions about the sample size and the sampling design, and he will be confused. And the most surprising issue and incident, I found that in one PhD presentation, the scholar was saying that I adopted judgmental sampling, and the panel members say that no, it is a purposive sampling, and the scholar say it is a judgmental sampling. The panel members say it is a purposive sampling, and the problem is that the Indian authors say it is a purposive sampling, and the same sampling is named as judgmental sampling according to Cooper and Zygmunt. So you can understand that how much the confusion is there in the market, right? Purposive sampling and the judgmental sampling are the same thing. And because of the unawareness, the scholar is saying it is judgmental, and the panel members say no, it is not judgmental, it is purposive. So there are so many funny incidents I faced in my life on sampling designs. So let's start with these notes, with these uh, incidents. So because the topic, I will cover two things in this session. One is what are the different sampling designs, and number two, how to design the sample size. Okay, so I hope this lecture will give you new insights. Okay, now first of all, when we decide the sampling, we have to decide what is the population and what is the target population and what is the sample. So there are few things which you need to discuss. So let me discuss the basic things. Number one, when you start a research, you start with a problem. Whenever you start a research, you start with a problem, right? And I'm telling you, the kind of research problem we are taking and the kind of research problem the industry is facing is significantly different in India. In Indian culture, I found that there's a significant difference about the research problem that industry is taking and the researcher is taking. Okay, so because if you think from a businessman point of view, the first thing he want to know that to whom I will sell my products, to whom I am solving the problem, right? मैं basically किसकी problem solve करने वाला हूँ, ये that is called population, right? So population means whatever study you are doing, whatever research problem you pick, right? So which population you are going to serve, which problem you are going to solve. So that is basically problem. Problem means on which your study will be applicable, and on you can, because you cannot pick the population, you are going to pick a sample. So population, you can see that population refers to any group of people or objects that form the subject of the study in a particular survey and are similar in one or more ways. So like for example, if I want to study the cancer patients, so all the cancer patients in the world is by population. Suppose if I want to find out the medicine for a corona disease, so all the corona patients in the world is my population. If I want to study the purchase behavior in online shopping, so everybody who is doing online shopping is my population. If I am studying the work-life balance of a teacher, so all the teachers is my population. So population means is the person for whom I am going to give a solution. I am solving a problem. So that is called population. But the problem is that I cannot pick, I cannot cover the entire population. So I will decide a target population. For example, in Delhi and NCR, I know that 80% of the scholars, they say that my target population is Delhi NCR or NCR region of India. So similarly, though anybody who is residing in Mumbai, they their target population is maximum Maharashtra or the Mumbai, right? So we can define the target population as the population which is approachable from where you can pick the sample, right? So population is the bigger area. Target population is the subset of the population, and some sample is the small subset of the target population. So target population is the population which is approachable to you. For example, if you want to study the employee of IT sector, so you know that in the world there are so many IT sector companies, right? You cannot, even in India, the IT sector companies are also there in the Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai. You cannot take the sample from each country. So your target population is the area which is approachable. For example, you decide that you will collect your data from Delhi NCR region. So NCR region will be your target population. So I am giving you one recent example. One of the scholars is studying the user of this taxi apps like Ola and Uber. Now the problem is that we discussed on the problem that how to decide the population and what is the target population. Because Ola and Uber is present almost in every big city in India. right? So the population is because we are targeting the behavior of Indians. So anybody who is using the Ola and Uber app is the population. Now the second problem is that how to decide that which is the target population. So in this case, uh, we identified few cities like in Delhi NCR is included in the target population, but because we think that Delhi NCR is not sufficient for target population, let's cover some more cities. So because the scholar belongs to Punjab, so he picked Chandigarh also, because in Chandigarh, Ola and Uber are very popular. Then he start taking the Amritsar. So he say that I will, my target population is Delhi, NCR, Chandigarh and Amritsar. So in this way, you can decide your target population. The only thing is that the target population should be representative of the population. But defining the target population is not an easy task, because you have to prove that your target population is similar to the population, is representative of the population. And from the population, you have to pick the sample. Now, the method you are going to apply to pick the sample in the target population is called sampling technique. So we are going to discuss the all these things. Now let's move to the next slide. So you can see that there are few words I mentioned. Number one is element. Element is that from where you are going to collect the data. You may going to collect the data from the patient. You may collect the data from the customer. You may collect the data from the teacher. You may collect the data from the student. So you have to decide from whom I am going to collect the data. So that is your element or a unit. So the element or a unit is the person, is the company, is the patient from whom you are going to collect the data. And one thing you can see here, so this is a sample. I'm denoting this is a sample. You are doing the sample study in the hope that whatever conclusion you will draw is applicable on the population. So this is one common thing in statistics, that because we cannot study the whole population, so we study the sample, and whatever results comes will be applicable on the population. This process is known as statistical inference. So you can see that this is the concept, and this concept is known as statistical inference. Statistical inference means you study the sample and the results are applicable on the population. So this process is called the statistical inference. So statistical inference is the objective of the research, is one of the objective of the research, when on the basis of sample study, you are drawing the conclusion on the population, right? And whatever you measure from the sample is known as statistics, and whatever you measure from the population is called parameter. So we calculated the statistics, and on the basis of statistical inference, we decide about the parameter. So parameter is population mean in this case, and X bar is the statistic. You can see that this is a small sample, and this is, suppose it is a population. If we calculate the mean of the population, this is called parameter, and if we calculate the mean of a sample, this is called statistic. And because we don't have the data of the population, we calculate the statistic and assume that the population mean is equal to statistic. So this is the equal to sign, and we study X bar and will decide and that this may be the population mean. So this process is called statistical inference, and I hope why sample is important, because the sample should be selected in such a way that you can decide about the right conclusions about the population. Okay. Uh, Here you can see that there are two types of surveys. One is called census survey, and second is called sample survey. So census survey and the sample survey are two things. Indian government do census survey once in 10 years, or you can say once in a decade. However, sample survey is very common. Every researcher, every PhD scholar is doing sample survey. Anybody who is writing the research paper is doing the sample survey. So sample is the subset of the population. And if you study each and every unit of the population, it is called census, which is not possible for any company or for any researcher, because in census, sometimes we have 30 crore population, 20 crore population. So it is not possible to collect the data from each and everybody. So sample survey is very common. And the problem with census survey is that the more time is required, and more money is required, and more manpower is required. So because of these three problems, it is not possible to do census survey. We always do sample survey because less time is required, less money is required, less manpower is required. So sample survey is always preferred as compared to census survey. Okay. Now in sampling, there are three laws. So whenever we decide our sampling, so we should know what are these three laws. Okay, so let me explain you basically what is the basic meaning of three laws. The first law is known as central limit theorem. So central limit theorem say that if you increase the sample size, the distribution of the sample tends to be normal. So in simple language, if you increase the sample size of your study, what will happen, that the distribution will move towards the normal distribution. So you can see here blue line indicate that your sample is a skewed distribution. It is not a normal distribution, but you increase the sample size, the distribution will be like normal. So when we collect the data, we have to check the normality of the sample size, and we should increase the sample size to that level when the distribution becomes normal. So why this normal distribution is required? Because if your sample, if your distribution is normal, if the distribution of the variables is normal, then whatever results you are drawing can be applicable on the population, or in other words, your results can be generalized. So that's why normality of the distribution of the variables is required, and we hope that we should collect the data to the sample size when we achieve the normality of the variables. And normality of the variables is decided by the skewness level and the kurtosis level. So we are having the two things, skewness and kurtosis, which should be less than 1 anyhow. And although we are having the test of testing the normality, like we are having the Kolmogorov-Ismendorf test, we are having the Shapiro-Wilk test, we are having the Jacobera test. So there are many tests which are used to decide whether the variable is a normal distributed variable or not. But the common thing which I suggest to you is that your skewness and kurtosis level should be less than 1, right? So that you can say that my data is near to the normal. So central limit theorem is, I think, is clear. Increase the sample size to that level when your variable becomes normally distributed. After that, we are having the law of large number. The law of large number say that if your sample size will increase, the accuracy of the results will also increase. So the first law is talking about the normality. The second law is talking about the accuracy. So increasing the sample size will tends to normal distribution. Increasing the sample size will give you more accurate results. So I think you understand the difference between central limit theorem and the law of large number. So more data, more normality, more data, more accuracy. Similarly, there is a law called law of random selection, right? Law of random selection is that try to select your sampling unit randomly, because if you select uh, not randomly, if your selection is not random, a lot of biasness will come in the selection, and then the problem will be there, right? For example, if I ask you that if next year uh, the suppose the company, your company decide that we have to send three employees to take course in Switzerland, so do you think your number will come? So if you say yes, it means if the chances of everybody to be selected in the team, then we call it is a random selection. But if you think my boss will select only the favorite employees, then the selection is not random, right? Actually, I hope you understand the concept of random selection. In random selection, if you have the same probability as the probability of any other person, then the selection can be known as random selection. But if you think my probability is less and other somebody else's probability is very high, so it means the selection of the boss in the committee is not random. So the law say that if the selection of the sampling unit as random, the you will get more accurate results. So higher the randomness in the selection, higher the accuracy in the results. So this is the simple law which is known as law of random selection. So we should decide the sampling more random so that we will have more accurate results. So these three laws are there. And okay, so this is a comparison between sample and census. We already discussed this. And okay, this is also, I will explain you this. So first we define the population, then we define the sampling frame, sampling technique, sample size. We are discussing the whole every step in this lecture. So okay, now first is when we decide this target population, so what are the points we should keep in our mind? So because we are using this word sampling frame very popularly, and I know that uh, uh, this is my observation that even if in this lecture there are 600 people, hardly 50 people can define the sampling frame. So sampling frame is a very confusing term, and in my life I found that there is a lot of confusion between target population and the sampling frame. So let me define you what is this target population and how the target population decided, and what is the sampling frame. So target population, one thing is very clear: the population which you are going to cover in your study, the subset of the population which you are going to cover in your study is known as target population. So when you decide your target population, you have to decide the target population in 5 terms. Number one, who will be the element? Element may be the customer, the respondent. So who is the respondent? So you have to design who is my respondent. So respondent may be a customer, student, teacher, patient. That is the customer, that is the element, right? After that, sampling unit is nothing, it is the element, the same thing. And there is no difference between the elements. And element is we define in the context of the population, and sampling unit we define in the context of target population. Now the next thing which is important here is called sampling frame. Sampling frame means from where you are going to select the sampling unit. For example, suppose I want to select 10 faculty from a university. So from the help of which information I can decide, I can select the 10 people, right? So I can do one thing, I can go to the website, I can make a list of the faculties, and that the list of the faculty, that they, if I have the list of the faculty members in a sheet, that sheet is known as the sampling frame. Sampling frame is the document from where you are going to select the sampling unit. So that is a very complicated thing. Like for example, in a hospital, if you want to take the data from 10 patients, so if you have some information about the number of patients in the hospital, then you can select the 10 patients from there. So that is called sampling frame. Sampling frame is the material, is the source material, right? Is the source material from which the sample is drawn. So you must define your sampling frame in the research, because I know in my past experience that very less number of scholars are defining the sampling frame in their study. whether you are writing a paper or whether you are writing a thesis, you have to define the sampling frame. Sampling frame means what is the source material from which you decided your or you selected your sampling units. So sampling frame is necessary to report in almost every document. And I haven't hardly I have seen any thesis or a paper where they defined the sampling frame, especially from India. So sampling frame is something which you should have complete clarity, and you can decide the sampling frame of your study. I hope the sampling frame is clear, because sometimes the information is collected from the website, sometimes the information is collected from the some reports, sometimes the information is collected from the documents, sometimes we are collecting the information from the HR managers or payroll. So you must have some sampling frame or the list of sampling units from where you can pick your sample. After that, you have the extent and the so you can see that the extent means what is the geographical boundaries. You have to define that also, geographical boundaries, and you have to mention your the time period. For example, you have to mention that I collected my data between the period of January 2020 up to December 2020. So the target population is defined in respect of these 5 issues. So because these things are not very difficult, only thing is that you should have clarity on that. So I hope it is clear, and let's move to the next slide. Okay, so I in this case I decided to define sampling frame once again. So sampling concept, sampling frame. So you can see that the population is the biggest circle, and you are having the sampling frame, some document. In the sampling frame, you decided your sample response, and chance error and response error I will explain you later. And so this is a sampling frame, a document where like lost contact details. Okay, so this may be some example. Suppose you are studying the data from the students, so alumni of a university may be the sampling frame. So sampling frame in you can read this statement once again. A sampling frame is the list of accessible members of a population. So it is a kind of list in which you can draw, from which you can draw the sampling or samples, sampling units, or these respondents of your sample. After that, after understanding the sampling frame, I am defining the sampling techniques. So, but I want to see whether you are with me or not. If yes, say yes in the chat box. If you are understanding my lecture, so kindly say yes in the chat box so that I can see. Okay. So no comment is coming in the chat box. Okay. So पहला comment आया है from Amir Khan से. So you are with me. So in 746 participant, only one participant is with me, who is saying I am with. Okay. So I just want to confirm whether you are understanding my lecture or not. Okay. So thank you. Now I am getting the response that you are with me. So thank you. Oh, very good. So now let me explain you the next part, which is called sampling technique. And sampling technique is very easy thing. So just listen carefully. There are 2 types of sampling techniques. One is called non-probability sampling, and one is called probability sampling. So again, I will ask you some questions. Number 1, Suppose DDA is the Delhi Development Authority. So they want to sell some flats, and they are having 100 flats with them, and they want public to be applied for the flats, and they will pick the lottery, and whosoever name will come, they will allot the flat to the applicants. So suppose you apply for the flat and tell me whether your probability and the probability of your neighbor is same or not. So if you think, if you apply your common sense, you know that because the participant will be selected on lottery basis, so my probability is also same and my neighbor probability is also same. So which kind of probability is this? So this is an example of probability sampling. So probability sampling is there in this case. Now, second, again, I'm asking you, if your boss is sending a team to the Switzerland for higher studies, so what will be your chance to be selected in the committee? Whether your chance and somebody else's chance is same or not. So I know that there is a lot of biasness in the industries and the universities. So I know that somebody chance is higher and somebody chance is lower. So this sampling is not probability sampling. This is called non-probability sampling. So non-probability sampling means when the chances of different people to be selected in the sample are not equal. So we basically divided the sampling techniques into two categories: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So first of all, I will start with the non-probability sampling. And once you understand the non-probability sampling, then we can go for probability sampling. Okay. So the first and easiest kind of non-probability sampling is known as convenience sampling. Convenience sampling means whosoever is available, collect the data from there. Because I know that many of the faculty members have the habit that they ask their student to collect the data, and because a student is a student, they are naughty people, right? So they collect the data from anybody who is available easily, right? So if you collect the data from those sampling units which are easily available, then it is called convenience sampling. For example, I am giving you one example. Once a marketing professor ask the student, then now you go to the market, go to the bus station, go to the railway station, and anybody who is using the taxi, Ola and Uber, take the interview of those people, and and whosoever is using the car apps, take the data from there. Now the student go to the different places, and whosoever is available, and even they started taking data from their friends also. They start taking the data from their family members also. They start taking data from their relative also. So if you are collecting the data from the people who are easily available, so this kind of sampling is known as convenience sampling. So convenience sampling, I hope you understand. Anybody who is easily available, you are taking the data from there. So this is called convenience sampling. The problem with convenience sampling is that because it may be biased, it may provide you biased results, right? It may provide you biased results. So this is the problem with convenience sampling. The chances of biasness is very high in case of convenience sampling, because it depends upon your circumstances, it depends upon your location, it depends upon your family and friends, right, from whom you are collecting the data. So that is a problem with convenience sampling. So if you ask me, I never recommend the convenience sampling, because there is a possibility of high biased data. So that is the problem with convenience sampling. Okay. Now let me tell you the next method, which is called judgmental sampling. And this method is also known as purposive sampling, because I have a lot of examples when there is a fight between the scholar and the panel member, and the panel member is saying you are using the purposive sampling, and the scholar is saying no, it is judgmental sampling, and actually both are same. Only difference is that the most of the Indian authors call it purposive sampling, and the authors like Zickman and Cooper, they call it judgmental sampling. Even N.K. Malhotra book, it is mentioned as judgmental sampling. So the judgmental sampling is very easy. You decide some criteria. So I'm telling you, you decided some criteria, and if the person is fulfilling that criteria, you are collecting the data. You will collect the data from there. Otherwise, not. For example, I'm giving you one simple example. So suppose one scholar decided to study the shoppers in the mall, shoppers in the mall, right? So he visited the shopping malls and decided to collect the data from some people. Now, if you are following the convenience sampling, it means you can collect the data from anybody. But in case of judgmental sampling, in case of purposive sampling, you have some criteria. Like you decided that I will collect the data from only those people who are more than 25 years of age. Criteria number one. Criteria number two, that they are doing at least the shopping of 2,000 per visit minimum, or they they are visiting the mall only for shopping, not for eating purpose and not for roaming purpose. So if you decided some criteria, and you will fulfill the data if you collect the data only when the sampling unit, when the respondent is fulfilling that criteria, then only you collect the data. So this method will help you in deciding that which respondent is the right respondent for data collection. So basically, you are using your mind and some criteria to decide whether this respondent is a right respondent or whether this respondent is not a right respondent. So you can see that suppose this is the available population, you are selecting him, him, or her, whatever be. So this is your sampling, right? You can see that the sampling. So you are selecting the sample on the basis of some criteria, and all these are black. It means they are satisfying the criteria, and anybody who is satisfying the criteria, only that will come in the sample size sampling sample. So this method is known as judgmental sampling, and I hope it is clear. So but how you have to decide the criteria, basically it is important. So the sampling criteria, the criteria to be decided for respondent selection should be designed very carefully, and a lot of experience is required for designing these criteria. And after designing these criteria, the probability is very high that you are getting the right respondent for the sample. So you can understand that how judgmental sampling is far better than convenience sampling, because in one study I know that I remember that in case of mall, the scholar sent one people, or they hired some students to collect the data from the malls. The faculty member sent the students to the mall, and when he started analyzing the data, he found that at least 30% of the respondent are those who are frequently visiting the mall, but they are not doing any shopping. And when she explored about the data, she found that most of these respondents are the college students, so who are just visiting the mall for roaming purpose, for dating purpose, and they are not going to shopping. So basically, if convenience sampling will give you this kind of problem, that you collect the data from the students who are roaming and bunking their class, and they are visiting the mall just for fun, right? But if you apply the judgmental sampling and purposive sampling, you know that from whom data should be collected and data should not be collected. So I hope you understand the convenience sampling and the judgmental sampling. Now this next method is called quota sampling. Sometimes we found that like for example, when I joined my teaching career in 2000, early 2000, at that time 50% were males and 50% were females. But now the problem is that the 70-80% are females, and male are reduced to 10% or 20% in most of the colleges. So suppose I decided to collect the data from the faculty members, so I may decide that the data should be collected from 60% female and 40% male. So when you decide the percentage like this, Like when you decide the percentage in the sampling, then this is called quota sampling. Like you have government quota, like 50, some quota is fixed for SC candidate, some quota is fixed for OBC candidate, some quota is fixed for general candidate. Similarly, when you fix the quota according to the demographic variables in the sample, then this sampling is called quota sampling. But like for example, I'm giving you one case. Suppose you decided the suppose you are doing the research on eaters, right? Anybody who is consuming the chocolates. So we know that most of the chocolates are consumed by the teenagers, then ladies, and then gents, and then old people. So if you decide the quota in your sample that I will take at data 20% data I will take from teenagers, or 50% data I take from teenagers, 30% from young people, and 20% from old people. So if you select, if you decide this kind of criteria or percentage, then the sampling is called quota sampling. But the mix of quota sampling and the judgmental sampling is the best way to do this. Only quota sampling is not sufficient for the selection. For example, quota convenience sampling may not be right method. Quota judgmental sampling may be the more accurate method of collecting the data. So I hope you understand that what is quota sampling. Simply on the basis of some demographic profiles, you decide the percentage to be collected. Percentage of different groups. Suppose in the case of male and female, I give you example that if I decided to collect the data from 70% female and 30% male, this is kind of quota sampling. Okay, like one thing one example recently I telling you, somebody is doing research on the higher education teachers. Then we had a discussion that because in a college, for every 10 assistant professor, there are 3 associate professor and 1 professor. So when we collect the data, we should not collect equally. So we should decide the percentage for assistant professor, associate professor, and professor. So we decided that 60% data should be collected from the assistant professor, 30% data should be collected from associate professor, and 10% data should be collected from the professor. So when you decide this kind of percentage to different subgroups, this is called quota sampling. Okay, the last sampling in non-probability sampling, it is the last method of non-probability sampling. This sampling is very popular. This sampling is known as snowball sampling. Snowball sampling, right? This sampling is very interesting. Interesting. Sometimes the respondents are not available easily. Even you don't know who is my respondent. For example, like corona patient. If you want to study the corona patient, it is very difficult to found them. So you can do one thing. You can go to the doctor and ask the doctor, sir, do you know any corona patient? Then you visit some corona patients, and then you take the data from these patients that can you give references of some more corona patients from where I can collect the data. So basically you are taking the references from the people. So if you are taking the references from the people, then you can get the data. So basically this is called reference sampling. Reference sampling means you are taking the reference from the people and references of the references. Like you know that if some LIC agent comes to you and you buy the LIC policy, then he asks you, sir, can you give some references who is also interested to buy the LIC policy? So if you ask references, right, and you collect the data from references of the references of the references, then this kind of sampling is called snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is popular. Like for example, I'm telling you, I was doing a project on the collectors. Collectors are those people who collect the antique pieces. Like there are many people who love to collect the old coins, old stamps, or antique objects. The problem is that these collectors are not available easily, right? So if you find out some collector and then ask for a reference, said, sir, you know anybody else who also doing the same thing, who is also collecting these stamps and antique pieces, then from there you are getting some references, then you approaching all these references and ask for the further references. So this is the example of snowball sampling that recently I used in one study. Okay, so I hope you understand now the snowball sampling. After snowball sampling, we are having the probability sampling method. And once again, I want to ask that, are you with me? Kindly write yes in the chat box. And okay, so you are saying yes. It means you are with me, and most of the yes are coming. Good. So in last few minutes, I explained you the concept of non-probability sampling. So I just repeat in 2 minutes what is non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling means when the chances to be the part of the sample is not equal for everybody. So we have four methods of non-probability sampling. One is convenience sampling, which is very easy to apply but problematic. Second is judgmental sampling, when you use some criteria for sample selection. Third is quota sampling, when you decide the percentage. And the fourth method is snowball sampling, when you take the references from the people and collect the data. Now I'm going to tell you the probability sampling. In probability sampling, one thing is very clear, that the chances to be selected in the sample is equal. Your chances and somebody else's chances will be same in the to be selected in the sample, right? I'm asking you very simple question. Suppose Delhi University uh, is calling the vacancy. They announce the vacancy and everybody is applying. So can you say that if all the candidates are having equal qualification, equal paper publication, and equal in everything, so can you say the selection is will be random or not? So now you will answer yourself. I'm not giving you answer of that. Most of the time we ask that whether the selection is random or whether the selection is not random. Okay, so simple random sampling, it simply means that your the lottery method is going to apply for selecting the sampling unit. Now, for example, you know that in kitty parties, I have seen that the ladies write the name of the person in the chit, and they put all the chits in a box, and somebody will pick the chit, and whosoever name is coming, the money goes to her, right? So this is a simplest example of simple random sampling. Means you can see that this is a chit box in this picture, and the person is uh, picking a chit, and whosoever name is coming, he will be the winner or something like that. So this chit method, lottery method, it is called a lottery method, and in lottery method, whatever whosoever name is coming, the method is known as simple random sampling. So one thing is very clear, that simple random is possible from a lottery method. Now there are two types of lottery method. One is the physical lottery method or manual lottery method. And but the problem is that if you want to pick 5 people from the 5 crore people, or if you want to pick 100 people from the 1 crore people, this manual process is just impossible. So what you do, you will go for computerized lottery method. So in computers, we can design some softwares which which is based on some random algorithm, and the algorithm was designed in such a way that computer use some functions which is selecting the numbers randomly. Like in Excel, if we run the command ran between, suppose I'm giving you this command in Excel, if you write equal to and rand between 0 to 100. So software will give you any number, single number between 0 and 100. Suppose the software is giving you 21. So it means 21% is selected for data collection. So this is called simple random selection, simple random sampling. Simple random selection is based on two methods. One is called lottery method, manual lottery method, and second called computerized lottery method or random method. Actually, the problem with simple random sampling is that if you have the data of your population, then only you can apply it. Otherwise, it is very difficult to apply the simple random sampling. And in research, the problem is that we never have the data of the population. The problem is that we never have the data of the population. I have not seen any study when we are having the data of the population. Yeah, there are some rare cases. For example, if you are doing a study only for a company, if you are doing a study only on a university, or the patient in a hospital, then you can do a simple random sampling. Otherwise, in PhD, we are not doing a study on a single unit, on a single company or a single hospital. So normally we take the data from different places. So in practical, the simple random sampling is not possible. Simple random sampling is possible only with a very finite population. This is the problem with case of simple random sampling.